Welcome back, everyone. So now we're going to the next part of our careers day, and it's Pharmiweb and Vince Lodi. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Pharmiweb presentation this afternoon. First of all, I have an apology for Eric because I didn't put the surround on my slides, so you'll just have to make do with the Pharmiweb ones. By way of introduction, I am the Managing Director of Pharmiweb. I've been running the company now for about 24 years. Before that, I was 10 years in recruitment, so I've been around for a little while and I've seen a few things. One of the things that Pharmiweb is very good at is helping candidates to find jobs, as you can imagine, being the site that it is. And what we found over the last 2 years in particular is the data we're getting is really telling us what's going on in the market and allowing us to make business decisions. Obviously, we get a lot of feedback from some of our bigger clients, large farmers, large CROs, biotechs, and all the recruitment consultancies. So what I've done today is sort of put some of that information together, which I'm hoping might help you to make some decisions on what you do in finding the career, but also understanding a little bit about what's happening in the background from a technology point of view. So hopefully this will help you to a certain extent. Okay, so moving on. First of all, a bit about Pharmiweb. We've been going for over 20 years, primarily working in pharma and life sciences. We're very niche, so we do give 100% of our time and focus on the industry. We only have relevant jobs, relevant candidates, and the AI and our systems allows for us to do better matches. And obviously we've been around for so long, we're very well respected. But the stats say it all, really. So some key things about Pharmiweb. You'll all be using the site at some point if you're looking for a job, I'm sure. Things like job alerts that we're sending out in the form of emails, 813,000 last month. Job applications, 23,000. Candidates applying for jobs. And we sent out 1.7 million newsletters directly to candidates, really targeting those candidates based on their previous searches, the types of roles that they'd be interested in or looking for. And this makes a big difference because it helps you to save time. And also our systems can pick up whether or not you're interested in those roles, whether you're applying for those roles or what you're actually doing. So technology is there, it's how you use it that counts. And we've been very lucky in our technology to make sure that it does comply with everyone's standards. What we've done with our AI recruiting is we've gone down the route of personalized recruitment. So a little bit about how that works. If you imagine Google, they do persona-based targeting. So with that, that means that if you go onto Google and do a search for washing machines, you will only get washing machines. It's very focused on what you're searching for. We call it personalized recruitment, as you can see here. And we do an in-depth personal analysis on every single candidate that we have that comes into the site, looking at what they're searching for and where they're going. And then we can give you automated job suggestions, CV presentation tips. We can look at event and training information and news based on your career and interests and where you're going in your career, so we can actually help you to find the right things. The other thing that we're trying to do is build predictive dashboards. Again, the AI builds that. So if we have access to your mobile device for our apps, we can then start to text you. So we've done a lot of research around this with active candidates, and over 80% have said that they'd like to receive 5 texts from us a day with up to 12 vacancies in it, so that it saves you time on looking for the things that you're always going to be looking for. So you get the latest jobs that are available for you in bite-sized chunks. You can actually go in, have a look at them and apply to those jobs. And this is all online based, of course. The other thing that the Farm website does, whenever you come into the site, regardless of your technology level, it's AI driven. So the first thing we look at is your screen size, your version control, and your internet access. Based on all of those things, we give you the fastest possible version of Pharmiweb to suit your needs. And the other thing that we're launching this year, again, which is new from an AI point of view, is we're launching candidate career hubs. And what they will do is start to look at your career as no longer linear. So we start to give you options around more commercial type roles, marketing type roles, or if you're going into the more scientific side, more development type roles, those types of things. So The objective of the site will be to keep you interested in what's happening around you, make sure that you're looking at all the options, not just the jobs that you're searching for, because there may be things that you've not considered. So we're trying to use the technologies to support candidates finding jobs in the marketplace. And so far it's been very successful. So we're quite pleased with that. When we're looking at recruitment trends, things to watch out for really. First of all, automation and AI. There are some plus points and some negative points. Obviously, the problem you've got with most of the larger client ATS systems is when they're automatically looking at your CV or your application, the algorithm may not suit what you're trying to get across. So you need to work out what's the best thing to do. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we move forward. Things like your experience of working with that organization or even applying for a job, onboarding tools, onboarding packages, how do they keep retention, and how do they actually make digital transformation work for them on their automation process for HR. So there's lots of things to look out for with trends. Obviously, COVID's caused a lot of problems as far as changing the way that people work, and that's reflected in what people are now looking for generally. So key thing really, for most candidates, because the market is so buoyant, it's all about what's in it for me. There is lots of choice. If you're new to the industry, it's how do you actually break in to the industry? And generally there's 4 clicks or 9 seconds, and then most candidates have actually lost interest because there was nothing there to actually attract them. So we've been working heavily with a lot of the larger clients that we have to try and embrace more employer branding, and their EVP to help you make that decision on whether or not they're the company for you. The other thing we've been looking at is signposting. So this may be new to a lot of you. Pharmiweb actually affects about 60 other websites, as well as being a source content provider for Google, which means that any information on Pharmiweb is searchable on Google within 3 minutes. But what we're interested in is where do candidates actually go and where would you go to actually look for jobs? And there's a whole range of different things where you'll actually see information. Social media, search engines, job boards, lots of digital communications coming into the site itself. And what we've tried to do is give you the best possible chance of finding a job. And essentially, about 80% of all candidates find a job through the 5 sources that you see here outlined. Obviously, we're in that mix as well. But LinkedIn's very much involved. Google controls about 62% of all traffic for all jobs across the industry. And then obviously Indeed's on there. And interestingly, Glassdoor is starting to represent a number of companies from recruitment, but also you can go and have a look at Glassdoor to see what other people have said about them. So these highways are very important because if you know most of the jobs are going to be in those areas, it saves you time and you can just go and look at the sources that hold most of the information. We've also been looking at mobile recruiting and what people are actually doing. So habits have changed a lot. So when you're looking at passive and active candidates, depending on where you are in your career at the time and what you've done with your details, there's a lot of activity around what people are doing in percentages as to whether they're actively looking or whether they're non-actively looking. There is never a time when people aren't interested in what's going on in the marketplace. And the other thing is what's important. So obviously salary is important, but not as important as it used to be. So one of the things that we've picked up on over the last year and a half in particular is some more experienced candidates starting to really look at the company they want to work for and will actually move for a similar salary package, or a small increase just to actually go and work for the company that they want to work for. Things like location, commuting time, can you work at home? Is the company you're going to be working for very flexible about what you can actually do? All those types of things are starting to come into the mix for you to consider. One of the big complaints that we get from a lot of our recruitment partners is candidates not really thinking about and qualifying what they want from a role before they even start. And it causes problems down the line, as you can imagine. Other things that we look at are different considerations. So healthcare packages, flexible working hours, holiday time, buying in holiday time, working from home options. These are all the key things. Student loan assistance is still right up there. But this gives you an idea of some other things to think about when you're looking at a company to be your employer of choice. Things like employee outings, on-site gyms, team bonding events. Are those things important to you, or don't they really matter? Depends on where you are in your career at the time. And then when we're looking at benefits, what do those benefits actually involve? There's lots of things that you can do as far as benefits are concerned. And I think when we're looking at interview prep and qualifying what you want, it's things like salary, it could be the management team, could be the culture of the company. Are there quick ways to get promotion? What's the promotion that they look like? Flexibility in working hours as you move forward in your career. Obviously, looking at the background of the company. So biotechs are very patient focused. And as we already heard from Roche, they're looking at personalized healthcare. What sort of things would attract you to a company? Be very clear on what you're looking for. It actually helps and will help you as you move forward. And again, what type of role? Do you want to be more commercially focused? Do you want to move in that direction? Do you want to be more research focused? All of these things you need to consider before you make sort of applications. A lot of candidates make a mistake of just shotgunning their CV to every single vacancy they can find. That's not necessarily the best thing to do. So be aware of all of these different options that you have and start to think about them and plan your recruitment campaign. Other things to look at, what's the culture of the company has become, as I said, one of the biggest areas. So lots of different things apply when you're looking at the culture of the company. Every single company is different. They've all got different ideas about where they are. Different departments within companies have different ideas about where they are and what they're doing. So research before you go in and actually look at what the company does. What's their culture like? What are their people like? How do they see their employees? What do they offer their employees as far as career development is concerned? And all of those things combine to give you some idea as to the sort of company you want to go and work for. And I've outlined here some of the key ones that we picked up on over the last year or so. I'm not going to go into all of these in any detail. I'm going to have the slides afterwards for you to have a look at and sit down and think about where you want your career to go. So when you're being clear about what you want, location and role are two things really. So do you want to be working from home? Do you want to work in a certain town? Do you want to work in a certain city? Do you want to move on to work in another country? If so, what countries? In what locations? Do you want to go contract? Do you want to go freelance? And what size of company do you want to work for? And what type of company? You need to put some thought to all of these things. Start to build a picture of the sort of organization that you'd like to work for and think about what you'd like to get back from that organization, because they generally care about you and where you're going and they want to keep you for as long as possible. We know that the average time that someone spends in a role in the regulatory side of things at the moment is about 3 years, 9 months. So in other areas it's less than that and sometimes it's longer. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? You need to think about where you're going in your career and the different type of experiences that you actually want to get from that. And then moving on from there, track your responses. This is a Sankey graph of a particular candidate that's looking for roles. And you can see on here the amount of jobs, the amount of time and effort that you need to put into finding a job before you get down to, the last 20, 30, where you're actually starting to get involved into interviews and looking at what's going on. And that includes the interview process itself. Is it 1 interview, 2 interviews, 4 interviews? How many people are going to interview you? Are you going to be interviewed by your line manager? Do you get interviewed by HR first? How long is it going to take? And what timescale is the particular company you've employed for looking at? Because that might affect other jobs that you're looking at and what else you're doing. One of the better things that you can do in the industry, of course, is to try and get recruitment agencies on your side so they can actually help you, give you advice and prep you before meetings, because all of a sudden that's becoming really, really important. But track your responses and see what's happening and the sort of companies that are getting back to you, the certain companies that don't, where the jobs are, and think about the locations as well. Just some thoughts around, you can get some progress on and some thoughts on where you're going. Some of the HR trends for 2021, more remote working really, I suppose, is probably going to be the biggest one. Feedback from employees, listening to what their employees are saying and actually acting on that feedback has become important. Investing in mental health support, looking at more data around what HR actually does, and thinking about the skills development within the organization. So HR is going to be behind you, especially in the pharma and life sciences sector, to actually help you move on and progress your career. But again, you need to have a clear idea yourself as to where you want that to go. And then we're looking at employer branding, so working with clients, because attracting the right kind of employees has become very important. High demand for candidates in the industry at the moment, highest I've ever seen it in 24 years working in the industry. Niche job boards like ourselves have disappeared primarily. Obviously, we're still there to support you, and it's a question of finding the right places to look. Internal workloads are very high. People working from home, interestingly, tend to work 8% harder and be more productive than they were in the office. So think about, do you want to be in the office? Do you want to work from home? 92-day recruitment lag times. That's typically the time it takes to actually find a job from when you first see an advert to when you go for the interviews and you accept a role. So it's not going to happen quickly. You've got time, you can think, you can change, you can adapt and learn as you go along. Competition for candidates is very high. So now's the right time to be looking. And when we're talking to our clients, there's little or no employer branding in the industry. So we're starting to really bring that to the fore. Companies need to sell themselves to you. You're an asset to the company. Relocation's not there anymore unless you need to be on site or unless you need to be in a certain office. Interestingly, we still have a percentage, around 40% of companies, that still want their staff to go back to the office and still want them to maintain that working relationship with other employees. So again, all of those things need to be considered when you're looking at the sort of role that you're going to go for. And think about some of these things as questions to ask while you're in the interview process. Other things that are affecting companies that you want to join. So typically what we have is social media influence maps. So, all of the recruitment assets that a company have go into a sphere of influence. But what you also need to look at is their corporate branding, what they're actually doing, what their financials look like, what products they're bringing to market. Do they have a pipeline? Any company website you go to, if it's a manufacturer, will have a pipeline of drugs that they're bringing on. And most companies will have a list of the work they're actually doing. Look at that work, look at what they've done. Read any white papers. Know the company that you want to go and work for. And again, all their products and services also go into a sphere of influence. And all of these things should have an influence on you as to whether or not that's the company you want to work for. These are important things, because if you do this diligence, if you go and look at this information before you go for interview, it really sets the scene for how you are as a person and how you come across to that recruitment panel. And some of the key areas for us when we're looking at employer branding across the Pharmiweb site, we're looking at what candidates are searching for. So typical things to go and look at, things like career path examples, ideally videos, a day in the life, what training am I going to get? Team lead videos, if you're looking at jobs to apply for from a company. Why is it a great place to work? Are there any videos of staff saying what they really think? What opportunities am I going to get per country, per site, per individual region? And what are the benefits packages, or is it a standard package across the board? And by far the biggest one that active candidates search for is success stories. Someone that's worked for that company, what have they done, explaining where they've gone in their career and how they've moved forward. So all of these things in this center area are things that you need to think about and maybe go and look for before determining the company you want to work for. And other things that are important are things like charity work and awards that the company's won, environmental policies, sustainability policies. Everyone likes to know that they're working for an organization that actually cares about the future of the planet, as well as their own employees. And what to expect from an employer. So some very clear goals, first of all, purpose and leadership, make them give you very clear information about what they're expecting from you. Competitive and appropriate reward and recognition. If you work hard for an organization, you should be rewarded for it. Open communication. A lot of companies now really promote the fact that you can talk to someone, very clear transparency and engagement about what you want. If you've got problems, you can talk about it. But conversely to that, if you're really happy about working for an organization, tell them that too. And be responsible for what you do. Empowerment and autonomy, being able to work alone and actually add and support the team that you're with. Career advancement and growth, because guess what? If the career and advancement and growth is not there, then you'll move on and do something else. Trust and respect. Pharma and life sciences, I think, is a great industry to work in. I've been working in the industry now for probably 30 years, and I couldn't really possibly even think about moving anywhere else. It's a great place to work. On the job learning, multiple opportunities. Is there options? I mean, I think Ross was saying this morning that the fact that you can move around within the company and go and experience different areas, that's the type of environment that really allows you to thrive. And flexibility. Again, some companies are flexible, some are not. The other thing to consider is work-life balance. You know, when are you expected to work? What hours? Over what period of time? And then things like comprehensive customized benefits programs, because, you know, it might be more important for you to not have a parking space, but, you know, have somewhere where you can either bicycle or traveling distances, those types of things. Small things like that can make a difference. Parking spaces in cities can make a difference. Having an inclusive culture is very important from an employee. You know, get involved in what the company's doing, know what the company's doing. And then finally, you know, future development. You know, where's the company going? Are they expanding? Are they contracting? Where do they see the future? Make sure that aligns with the aspirations that you have yourself. All of these things become very, very important when you start to really get an idea about where you want to go in your career. And then conversely, what the employee expects from you. They like results-orientated people, solution-driven, someone that can make decisions and solve problems, good at collaboration, working with the team and team structure, and be accountable, responsible for what you're working on. Everyone's got deadlines, everyone's got targets, everyone has to put, you know, 120% in sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes, but be responsible for what you do. Candidates that take initiative, plan, organize, and prioritize, especially if you're doing project work. And a big one is positive mental attitudes. You know, lead by example, join the team, always be keen to get involved and move forward with the business. If you have job-related knowledge, fantastic. If you're coming new into the industry, start to look at where to find that knowledge from. Talk to people, get an idea about what you need to do. How do you manage your stakeholders and set expectations and influence people? And resourcefulness. All of those things sound like buzzwords, but they're not. They actually do mean something. Before you go into an interview, start to look at those things and see how you can contribute. The interview process, to be honest, has become personality driven as much as what your background and experience is. And starting to see more people finding jobs based on their personalities and some of their skill sets rather than just what's in your CV. So think about that. And then in conclusion, because I know we're coming to the end now, you know, think about what's right for you. Think about the culture of the company, what type of company you want to work for, and what do you want to get out of that? And that's not only benefits and training, but when do you want to do this? And where do you want to end up? And what's the future look like? Why are you moving? Are you flexible? And what experience do you want to gain? Some of these things are going to come out as questions to you, and you need to think about it so you can actually answer those questions. And some basic tips on when you're going for interview. And I know we've heard a number of things from some of the other presenters, but to me, it's flexibility both ways. What can you offer your potential employer and what can they offer you? On your CV composition, when you're looking at AI, sometimes less is more. So have a good profile page. If you do need to write in, have a cover letter already made up that you can use. Think about how you're going to get through the AI on large company ATS systems, because as I think came up earlier as well, within 3 hours you get a rejection. Well, the computer's made that decision, not a person. And think about viewing who's going to be interviewing, looking at the company. Go and find out more information. Be pre-armed when you go in. And when you're looking at interviewing for a prep, think about what makes you different, because you've got to sell yourself. You're a marketable commodity, as well as being a person. So think about self-promotion. What can you give that employer? What do you bring into the party? When someone interviews you, you might be interviewed by one person on the first occasion, 2 or 3 people on the second that all have different views and have not heard what you've already said. So always think about what are you actually doing, and look at things like the news, what's going on in the marketplace, be aware of what that company's experiencing at the company time. And going back to qualifying what you want, think about what motivates you. What do you want to get out of this job? And if you are moving from another position, think about why you're moving. What was it that made you move? Was it salary? Was it the management? Was it culture of the company? Didn't you get promotion when you thought you desired one? Is it flexibility issues? All of these things need to be discussed, and be honest with who you're going to work for. They will make a difference. Come across as a person, not a machine, which a lot of people prep for. And then finally, one of the things that we promote heavily on Pharmiweb is TOPRA itself. Do the right thing. Recommend TOPRA to friends, refer people to TOPRA. TOPRA is a fantastic governing body. It gives a lot back to the industry, and I think a lot of us tend to take it for granted. TOPRA's there because we need it to be there. So support it where you can. And that's me pretty much done. Any questions from anyone in the audience?
Yeah, so the floor is open to questions for Vincent.
I've emailed you or sent you a couple in the chat. But does Pharmiweb put pressure on hiring managers to actively give feedback to applicants? So your clients, would you ask them to, play ball on the hiring experience?
Yes, we do, because some of the feedback we've had from a lot of candidates suggests that around about 30% of candidates, if they don't get any response back and they don't get anything back from interviews, they will certainly never apply to that company again. And that will stay with them for a very, very long time until something changes that view. So positive feedback from hiring managers is very important. And also, if you decide not to take that role, sometimes a letter to the person that interviewed you just saying, look, thank you very much for the opportunity, but I've decided to go down a different route, is also not only polite, but leaves them you in a good light with that person as well. It's a very small industry, so think about how you come across.
The other question is, do you have a link for the study showing that working from home increases the efficiency by 8%?
Yeah, I can get that. That came from an EMIG survey. I'll try and dig that out for you. Well, they recently surveyed all of the second, third, fourth tier pharma partners that they had to see what the performance was like on their internal staff. One of the other interesting figures from that same survey was the fact that about 40% of companies will be going back to the office in a different form to what they've ever worked in before. So, 2 days in, 3 days out, that type of thing. So I think the way that we work is certainly going to change.
And then, do you have any insight about regulatory affairs jobs from your point of view?
As in what's currently going on in the marketplace, for example?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said earlier, it's the busiest I've ever seen it in regulatory. There's been a lot of changes in the world, not only because of COVID, but because of regulation and everything else that's happening. We've also seen, an example being Celgene, where they're bringing, 8 new products to market with 8 indications. They've got to get all of those products to the market, and that's just one company. There are many, many like that, as well as a lot of biotechs that are now really ramping up the speed that they can look at a molecule and bring it to fruition. So I can only see it getting busier. There's great need to bring on more junior people. We've already joined the European Students Association to try and help them bring more people into the industry. And it's quite a great concern, to be honest, because we need more people that are well trained to actually get these products to market.
Any other questions from anyone at this stage? Your presentation must have just been really complete.
Lovely.
All encompassing. But yeah, as I said earlier, if you have any other questions, this one question's just come in. What are the job opportunities in Australia?
Well, Australia is booming at the moment, like everywhere else. The problem you've got is actually getting there and getting a relocation package, because obviously it's in and out of lockdown like everybody else. But Australia is very interesting because it's a growing market. Asia Pacific area is growing, and it's not just Australia. You could be looking at New Zealand, Singapore, etc. So if you're looking at moving out that way, potentially it's as busy as everywhere else. There are opportunities, but again, you've still got to do your due diligence and look at exactly what you want. That would be my view on the Australian market at the moment.
Okay. And one final question. What about Cambridge area?
Yeah, Cambridge is always busy, as you can imagine,
yeah.
with the biotech sections there. Cambridge is a great place to work. It's really grown over the last 3-4 years in particular because of AstraZeneca, and there's been a lot of industry moving there. But there are issues with that as well. You know, once you're there, most people don't tend to move around, but just stay within that group of companies in that area. House prices are higher because, you know, pharma and life sciences has moved to that sector. And unless you can really think about Cambridge as an area where you want to live and stay, then there are other areas to consider as well as other countries, of course. Young people at the moment, the world's your oyster.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, somebody asked about Manchester.
Yeah, Manchester's interesting as well. A number of larger companies there. Probably only have around 18% of the UK market in the Manchester area and region. So again, is that a short-term move? Is it a permanent move? Consider that, because it will restrict you in the future if you just stay in one of those areas.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much. Once again, a great presentation. As I said, if there are any more questions, just email us. But for now, thank you again. And we'll go to the next session, which is by MHRA.